Commander Runningcloud here. Look what I see outside my window when I look outside. Moonists. What a nice surprise. What a nice surprise. Well, they're floating out of sight. They're floating out of sight now, so there they go, passing along. Very exciting. I hope you had a nice holiday season. Mine wasn't bad. Not too bad at all. It's funny, I saw those balloons last week when I was visiting one of the women in a church that I've been attending. Well, they're definitely gone now. But wow, I wanted you to see that. I was here feeling very ill. And I went away for Christmas. And when I was away from here, I felt just fine. So I'm pretty sure that you see this. Let me see. You see this thing right here? This thing right here? Well, it's not lights or anything like that, but we had those things at the FEMA concentration camp in Houston, Texas. And I don't know if they're generating microwaves or electromagnetic weapons. I don't really know. But I know when I'm staying in this hotel lately, I'm getting pretty sick. Last month when I stayed here, I had heart palpitations and had to go to the hospital. And once I was there, I learned about how the private profit-making subcontractors in the medical system are making it so you can't use different ways to pay your bills, that you get caught up in an automated system that includes a foreign call center with unsympathetic workers, which seems to be an employment criteria these days in customer service, finding people that really love to hurt other people and abuse them and not really help them at all. Anyway, the pain that I was feeling before Christmas was so significant that I barely made it out to spend the holiday with loved ones. I barely made the trip because I was feeling so weak from my ears ringing, from my stomach hurting. Even my dog cries over the physical symptoms of living here. The other hotel I stayed in, if I stayed in a room on one side of the hotel, I would feel subjected to the same kind of weaponry. But on the other side, they just didn't have the ability. So I know it sounds far-fetched. I know it sounds delusional, because that's what people tell me when I tell them this. But in this hotel room, I am under attack, and it's for speaking out. It's for having the courage to stand and describe the way the enemies of America are taking over our land right in front of our faces. Don't you know that these kinds of campaigns are progressive? Anyway, the amount of pain I was feeling by Christmas was so significant that I was remembering a time when Michael Jackson was talking about the pedophiles in Hollywood, but he couldn't be open about it, and they were prosecuting him as a pedophile. And I don't know if he was or not. I don't know what he was subjected to as a child. All I know is there was one point in the interview where he said to Mr. Bashir, "I can't talk about it. They are hurting me so much right now. They're hurting me so much." And nobody knew what he was talking about because he was sitting there all by himself, but I know what he was talking about. They are hurting me so much right now. They are hurting me so much. They're cramping up my stomach. They're making my ears ring. They're waking me up every 2 hours every night, and I'm exhausted. And why? Because because of the things that I've published, because of the things that I broadcast, is because of the way that I exposed their plans and continue to do so. It's amazingly overcast here in Indio, California. Overcast, you can see a lot of clouds out there, a lot of clouds. And I rested almost all day because I couldn't sleep most of the night, and neither could my little dog. So if I'm having delusions and psychosomatic symptoms similar to an electromagnetic or microwave attack on me, what's happening to my dog? Is my dog delusional too? Are we having mass delusions, my little dog and I? Oh, look, an airplane. You see the airplane flying? I don't know if you can see it. I always feel encouraged when I see airplanes because I always think maybe that's a good ET. And when I think that I'm not out here by myself under attack, when I think that there are people in the know making sure it doesn't get too bad or deadly, then I feel confident to say the things I need to say. Now, one of the things I was telling you the last time I broadcasted a couple of days before Christmas, I was telling you how the enemies of America, who are mostly European, are taking over the land out here in India. I've learned a lot more about it since then. I've learned more about the history of American owners in this land, blacks in particular, and the encroachments on the Spanish speaking Americans that have traditional ties here for probably millennia. Now, I have to say this. I love a lot of Europeans. I really do. I don't hate Europeans. I don't. There's really just no other way to define the enemies than to call them Europeans because racism has defined what teams they're on. When I was growing up, we used to play baseball and football. The boys did anyway. And because in the neighborhood you didn't use uniforms for spontaneous play when that was something kids did, you'd have the skins and the shirts. So one team would take off their shirts and the exposed skin, naked skin would define their team, and the other team would leave whatever shirts they were wearing on their bodies, and that would define their team. Well, in this particular war, whomever the architects of the war are have decided that the skins are going to be European and the shirts are going to be everyone else. So individual Europeans playing on the team often don't even know they're playing on the team. They just know that they're living their best life, and their best life is economically superior to the best life of the landowners, and they want to keep that going. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you want to keep that going? I mean, if you had an inside track to luxury living, if you could go anywhere you wanted in the country, if in the world, if everywhere you went, you were welcomed, wouldn't you want to keep that? Especially when you saw how the shirts are being treated. I mean, if you see how the shirts are being treated, you want to be a skin if you can, and if you can bear the moral implications of it. But I know European men that want the same freedom to develop economically that I do. They don't want to be forced in a hierarchy. They don't want to spend their 20s developing entrepreneurial interests only to find that once they contribute to making the industry profitable, that a lot of rich people wrap laws and government around it so that their best hope is to be employees and then funneled along whatever tracks become available because their power to create their own reality is gone. So it's not just happening to the blacks and the browns and the yellows. We're not the only ones that can't get access to big machines and construction permits. We're not the only ones being subjected to a hierarchical control system that we completely reject, totally reject. We're not the only ones who are not citizens of the United States of America corporate events. So, where I'm staying now, all along the mountain, the Europeans have created a fortress. And this mall that I'm staying in, I'm staying on the edge of a mall. And across the street, there's more mall. And they've built the mall to close access streets off. There was a street between where Home Depot is and between Home Depot and a brand new construction. There was a street. But a part of their strategy is to make sure that they close access off, that they close the streets off. King Leopold of Belgium, famous European known for using roads, the construction and design of roads to control transportation, travel, and to cue people for execution, to line them all up, and to make surveillance possible. King Leopold is known for murdering millions of Congolese men, women, and children. One of the most brutal colonists of the bunch from one of the smallest geographical regions. One of the smallest geographical regions is Belgium, and their native language is Flemish. But a lot of them speak German and Dutch and French as well, because their language is very old and very specific. Belgians are not only known for murdering and creating genocide in the Congo of Africa, they are also known for being leaders in human trafficking, especially child sex slaves and child sacrifices, victims of Satanists that like to kill children. Now, what's happening here in India, we've seen in Texas and Arizona as well to a different extent. It's happening all across America. All across America, Europeans are cutting off access to public parks and other lands that are undeveloped. And they're cutting them off. They're building fences around them. Last week, I was walking to Walgreens. I love to walk, it's an important part of my fitness program. And a place where trucks used to park while they went to Walmart has been fenced off completely, completely fenced off. I would take the dirt because those bright, glaring headlights of weaponized headlights would hurt my eyes so much that I would want to stay away from the main traffic. But now they've made it so you must walk along the main traffic. You must walk in lines of surveillance. You must. You have no other choice. I was shocked beyond shocked when somebody told me that the first African Episcopal Methodist Church of India, also known as FAME, which you can find the services online under FAME, First African Methodist Episcopal Church. The pastor was a European for many years. Imagine the pastor of an African Episcopal church being European. I was not as surprised as I would have been had I not called the NAACP in California when the police there supported a man that gave me a concussion and was terrorizing me and breaking into my house. And they kept putting me in a mental institution and not stopping him or arresting him or charging him until I finally had to leave to save my life because he was at the point where he was physically attacking me. He opened my apartment window and ran a hose to the roof to the ceiling of the room, and it was a popcorn ceiling. So while I was out of town at my mother's at the will and trust reading for my mother in Chicago, Roger ran water into my apartment so that when I got back, my ceiling fell in right on top of my bed. He was trying to kill me. The apartment building paid me for my losses, but I didn't fudge my losses. I didn't even claim enough, it turns out, because priceless things were lost. And I'm not dishonest. I'm not dishonest. So the police did not respond to me, and I called the NAACP, and a couple of European young men who made a joke out of me answered the phone. And I said, "Well, isn't this the NAACP?" And he said, "Yes, we are the NAACP," because it turned out all you had to do was buy the franchise. There was no requirement on who you had to be or anything like that. So I knew from 2015 that Europeans could buy Black protection agencies, American protection agencies, and run them like jokes, deprive them of power. But I didn't know that Europeans could run an African Methodist church. Well, underneath this Europeans' reign on the church lost their downtown lots of land to the city. They lost most of their land to the city and had to relocate to this edge of a highway slice of land. And it turns out, according to the person who was talking to me about the history of Indio, that there were 2 or 3 other Black churches in the same community, and Black homeowners lived all around there. But the city of Indio took it over, and they still have not built anything there. They surrounded the Black community with fairgrounds, with public agencies like the court and the town hall. And just like I saw on the Apache Indian Reservation in Arizona, near Globe, Arizona, the buildings that the European built to be administrative buildings, the court, the seat of government, were made of far superior construction materials than anything else anywhere around. The buildings in downtown Indio for prosecuting the Spanish speaking Americans and the Black Americans, the buildings made for prosecuting and controlling them are made out of big red bricks on land that they took over from the traditional communities of those people. Now, I've also heard that when Blacks first started to settle in Indio, they were not allowed to live anywhere but on the American Indian reservations, that the American Indian reservations made room for them. But I also know that this community in downtown Indio still has some Black homeowners there living in less economically favorable conditions than the people in the gated communities who are absolutely no better but are all Europeans. So, moral of this story, and my dog is crying, so I have to go in a minute. But the moral of this story is that the war on land and resources never ended. And while you won't see tanks with armed soldiers driving around, you will see people driving around here with extremely bright headlights designed to intimidate drivers and keep them off the roads. In addition to this kind of road manipulation to cut people off, to control traffic, to intimidate, we don't have tanks, gunnery tanks running down our streets, but we do have people with weaponized headlights that are using the headlights as weapons. And I'm going to show you, maybe if I can, the view on that bridge tonight. Look out here right now. See that building across the street? That one right there? Well, that's a great big old storage facility. Ha ha ha. You think people have that much storage? And you see down there where those slitted windows are? Okay. Now, that building over the past month installed bright white lights along the top of it. And the building farther away, that is the building right over there across the highway, also has bright headlights. And it actually looks like an airport runway. Looks like airport runway lights. And lately, I've seen very low flying planes fly across here to somewhere not too far north of here, not too far north of here, near Bermuda Hills and Palm and Hot Springs Desert area. And when I drove straight down that street over there, Jackson Boulevard, when I drove straight down there, I caught a lot of surveillance once I got past a certain point. You can't see that there are hills down there, but there are date plantations down there and a lot of empty land. And if you go far enough, there is an Indian reservation, but according to a local informant, those Indians there live a bit isolated from the others. It's towards Mecca and Coachella, and I'm not sure the names of the other towns. No, it's not towards, well, it's kind of towards Coachella, but not really. And no, it's not really towards Mecca. Mecca is down that way, and Coachella is down that way, near that, the direction of that mall. But straight down ahead, I caught a lot of surveillance, a lot of people driving in the day in white and black trucks with very bright headlights, very intimidating. And I saw an airport down there. Yes, I did. I saw an airport down there, a small little airport down there. So whatever they're producing there on American land, they are sending it on an airplane. Okay? So we've got people that are not American by race benefiting from natural resources in America. While Americans living in Indio, downtown Indio would be like straight ahead from here is downtown Indio. And the town leaders have pretty much made that dead. Downtown Indio is pretty much dead, except for those municipal buildings, which are quite grand, and the places where they tore the black churches down and left an empty field, fenced in, with a sign where the church used to be that says no trespassing. The point of my broadcast is this. Manifest Destiny was a European dream to own all of the resources from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean in the Americas. They felt driven to push on. The Oregon Trail murdered millions of indigenous Americans as a part of this campaign. Arizona continued with the slave industry until the real Donald Trump ended illegal immigration in 2017. You could still see the slave quarters and the plantations and the egg farms and the mining processing. And they were all surrounded by perimeters. They even fenced off the national and civic parks. Parklands were defined and parklands were taken over, fenced in. I would go to walk and enjoy a public park only to find a fence. And the way they build the housing is also very much like a fort. If you look at the architectural design for British forts, where they have the castle walls, and then they've got homes of the foot soldiers, and closer to the center of town, they have the merchants, and then they have the castle, and the lords and the ladies in the castle, and it's progressively more private and progressively more elegant. Well, that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at modifications of the same system. That's what we're looking at here. Thank you for joining me.